It's Saturday. Welcome to Parenting Porcupines. And as usual, we have a weird sort of moxed up mix of things that have been driving us completely bonkers this week. But most of them come down to a single topic, which is property rights. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So hang on to your hats, hold on to your seats, settle in, pour yourself a glass of wine. We're the Libertarian Moms, and this is Parenting Porcupines. Definitely ripped that whole concept off of like some super really good YouTubers where you like tease it and then you throw your not sure it's working for us, but we do have more followers, more subscribers, more likers and commenters than we have in the past. So we're getting better at this YouTube live scenario. We started last week talking about this idea of not having a college degree and still being a successful human being. And oh my God, is that a revolutionary concept? And now, apparently tonight we're going to take on a similar sort of feel, which is, maybe the thing that you own, you're allowed to just do what you want to with it. I don't know.
It's a novel concept.
It feels like a revolution. It might, in fact. The show notes are out on the blog if you want to go and follow along. We do sometimes stick to them, but if nothing else, you'll be able to find the links to the things that we have referenced. And we do have one article that kind of gets us kicked off here. And Melissa shared this. So it's about a guy who bought some land, and then he and his family moved to that land and lived in their RV because COVID happened. He lost his job. They're trying to save money. And they just were like, hey, we have this land. We're going to go live on this land. And the county came after him and fined him for living on his own property and evicted him basically from his own property. And that, of course, got all of our little libertarian hearts aflutter because, my God, that's your property. So, Melissa, you want to speak a little bit to that? Like, why did you bring that piece up? And like, what spoke to you about that article? Like, what outraged you about it?
It's just, yeah, it's his property. And he had checked the zoning laws and gotten an opinion from an attorney that said, yeah, you're allowed to do this. And the county, they want their money. So they brought up a different set of conflicting laws, because when there's thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of rules, there's bound to be some conflicting rules out there. And it makes me crazy, because people are always complaining about, the price of housing. Oh, well, tiny houses. Well, you can't do that because they have to be 1,200 square foot, because the government says you can't have a house that small. It's for your own good. You can't put one in your backyard and let your mother-in-law live there. It makes me crazy. Yeah.
I'm with you on this, because I have a feeling that the county, the people acting on behalf of the rest of the people, right? The county.
No one else cares.
Yes, exactly. Like, there's county council, there's these individuals, and these people are like the big time bullies of like your homeowners association. And right now we're talking about building a back deck and a screened in porch on the back of our house, and the impending fight with our homeowners. The reason we picked the guy we picked is because he's like, yeah, I'll take care of that. Like, he's going to put his dukes up.
Like, he'll deal with that, so you don't have to. Yes.
Right. Like, why do we need approval to do to our own home what we want to do to our own yard what we want to do? And back in the fall, our HOA offered this ordinance where they were going to limit the number of people who could reside in your house, and they were going to limit your ability to rent out your home, which is a direct stab at like Airbnb and these kinds of things.
Oh, we have those in Charleston. Yep, you cannot have an Airbnb.
Yeah, and we're not a tourist destination necessarily. So if people are leasing rooms in their home, it's because they need the money. Like, why in the world would you bring this ordinance around right now when people can't pay their mortgages? And this is a way they could do that by renting a room out of their home, right? That they could make room for somebody else. They could let another family move in, and then they could keep their property. Like, why in the world world would your homeowners be like, yeah, we're not putting up with that shit? I was so stunned by it that when I first read it, I was like, what is this all about? And then when my neighbors started to explain it to me, and it was very clearly racially motivated, because it was about, not he as an individual is racially motivated, but the ordinance came about from some people who had Latin American immigrants move in next to them, and they had multiple families living in the same house. That's where this comes from. This is a racially motivated ordinance. And I was so mad. I'm like you, Melissa. I'm like, I just don't even know what to do with how mad I am about this.
Yeah.
Sorry. This is slightly off topic, but
surprise.
It's a podcast, Jessica. Stick to the plan.
So in South Carolina, did you know that if your HOA has a lien on your property, certain liens, they can actually foreclose, like they can take your house?
Yeah.
So don't mow your lawn and you'll get your house taken away. Sweet.
Yeah, that's where those liens come from. It's things like not complying with, like, we put our Joe Jorgensen for president sign up and they threatened us, like, it better be down in 30 days. I was like, well, it will be down when the election is over, and whether that's 30 days or not, you can wait till then. Right? Like,
write me a citation, come back 2 weeks later, write me a second one, come back 2 weeks later.
But maybe they put a lien on my house, right? Like maybe they decide they're going to foreclose upon my house because they don't like the political messaging I have in my yard. Like that's this is the gist of it, right? Who really owns the property that you are paying money to pretend you own?
And this dovetails with zoning laws. And that's another pet peeve of mine. But I won't go off on zoning laws tonight. We'll save that.
Oh, no, feel free. We got nothing but time, Melissa. We got nothing but time. By all means.
So once again, everybody's complaining about, I live in Charleston. We've got high prices for houses, tons of traffic, and no central transportation, mass transit systems.
Right.
People that live here are complaining about all of those things. It's so crowded. There's so much traffic. There's nowhere to live, but we cannot increase density. Everything has to be single family. There's parking requirements. If you want to open a business, you have to have this many parking spots, even downtown where there's no land left. There's no land to do anything. And so people are building farther and farther out, and that just means we have to drive all together into the city. They need to get over it and realize it's a city and start building like it is. High density. Tokyo, it has some of the laxest zoning laws in the world. You could just build whatever in Tokyo. They have the best transportation system. They have the lowest housing cost of any metropolitan area. Because people build things where they need to go if the government will just get out of the way.
And when the market demands it, then those buildings reap the benefit. And if the market does not demand it, then those buildings are a bad bet, right? They're a loser for the building.
You don't want strip clubs next to elementary schools.
Yeah.
And because investors are and business owners are going to think it's a really good idea, that it's going to be very successful to build a strip club
right next to an
it will never happen. You can let people build anything they want anywhere. No one's putting a strip club next to a school.
I mean, I don't know about you, but where I find all of my adult entertainment is in the general vicinity of my daughter's elementary school. Like that's where I find all of it.
Yeah.
If I didn't find it there, I would never know it existed. I mean, porn sites, they're all being advertised right there in the PTO handout they give me on Monday night meetings. Yeah. But no, I think you're right. I think there's part of it is a Puritanism, right? As far as that stuff is concerned. We have in our area, there was some big zoning kerfuffle around putting in commercial zoning places commercial as opposed to residential. And it's property that this person just can't get rid of, right? They just can't sell it. And so he's like, well, if I can get it zoned to commercial, I would have more buyers for this property, right? And it wasn't zoned commercial. Everybody freaked out. Like, don't put the gas station across the street from the middle school. Nobody wants that. Let me tell you something. That would be the most convenient place for a Starbucks ever.
Yeah.
Ever. If somebody put a Starbucks there, they would make
an ice cream parlor.
like hand over fist. They would make so much money across the street from the middle school if they had a Starbucks. It would be ridiculous. But everybody lost their minds because they were worried it would be a liquor store. They were worried it would be a Dollar General. Like, God forbid we have a Dollar General.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a little out of control. Lily Mia Lucas, I know that watcher. Hi, good to see you. So she used to live in our neighborhood. Now she lives in Florida. So good to see you.
Your pain.
Yes, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. She knows exactly the intersection I'm talking about. But when we think about this, like how do you talk about this with your kids? How do your kids understand the difference between where schools are versus where commercial buildings are? And part of this has come around recently where we've separated commercial real estate so far from residential that we all have to drive to get a coffee. We all have to drive to work. We all have to drive to be part of these things. And there's a sense that maybe our community is suffering because of that, because of these zoning restrictions.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I would love to let my children walk to the corner store. There is no corner store. There's nothing. I would like to let them walk to the Dairy Queen. We used to, when I lived in a city, we used to walk all over the place. Candy store. I like sweets, so ice cream shop. But we would just wander around town, walking places. Pizza joints.
Sounds like this is like a cavity. It's like a whole journey of cavities.
Oh, my dentist loves me. I bought her a new house. Great. But yeah, I can't let my kids go anywhere. There's nothing to go to without me.
No, you're right. You're right. Because we're in suburbia here in Columbia too. Jessica, what about you up in the upstate? Are you experiencing that sort of distance from commercial zones?
Well, where we purchased our house, we intentionally purchased where we did to be where we are. So we're not within walking distance. There are plenty of places in Greenville that you can be within walking distance to restaurants and shops. I mean, if you want to live downtown, it's really expensive, of course. And then there are, apartments that are around those areas. But as far as residential neighborhoods, maybe some of the older neighborhoods, but like the newer subdivisions are typically kind of off the beaten path. Not really. No, there's really no beaten path anymore in the upstate, but you know what I mean. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the question is when we go and to like sort of pull away from the zoning scenario and back to like this property rights concept is, to Jessica's point, you bought what you bought, where you bought it for a particular reason. You are looking to do something specific with that property. And back to this article that Melissa sort of introduced as far as the topic is concerned. This person bought this property for a reason. This is going to be their forever home property. They were investing. This was going to be, it's a good bit of land. And so when we think about investing in that way and thinking that, land is the only thing worth working for, worth living for, you know what I'm saying? Like from that old Gone with the Wind quote, right?
Yeah, you sound like Charlotte O'Hara.
It's the only thing that lasts, right? when we think of land as an investment for your future, and then you're being told what you can and cannot do with it. I mean, how much government infringement is that, and how much is warranted, and how much is just like your shitty nosy neighbors being dicks? Because quite frankly, like part of me is like this whole ordinance around who can stay in your house and when they can stay there and how many cars you can have parked there and all that, to me is just people being jerks. Like this is not a legitimate reason for trying to infringe upon somebody else's rights. This is just you being inconvenienced by that person's liberty. And I guess that's where maybe the line gets drawn, is like, where does my liberty overlap with your liberty, and who's right in that debate?
If it's midnight and I've got 30 people at my house throwing a raging party that the whole neighborhood can hear, yeah, that's a problem. You deal with a specific incident. You don't make a blanket trying to prevent any incident. But Jessica was going to say something and I jumped in. Sorry.
It's okay. So I think it's really important when we're having this conversation too, because a lot of people, first of all, before I say anything else, I hate an HOA. I am the president of my HOA.
Well, that's one way to keep it from getting out of control.
I hate an HOA. Granted, our HOA has never been like that, you know, that bad. But so that said, that out of the way, a lot of people, even libertarians, will say that, you know, they don't necessarily disagree with having an HOA because it is technically voluntary. And I'm sorry, you see my rabbit hopping around in the background.
Don't be sorry. We love the bun.
Flopsy. Hello, Flopsy.
He likes to get in my business. But, you know, when you move into a neighborhood, you know, there's an HOA. And so it's more voluntary, right? But so I think it's important that we separate the HOA conversation from the government conversation, the county ordinances, the city ordinances, the county council decisions and things like that, because those are two completely separate things, right? Obviously, we get really, really, really upset when our counties start telling us that, you know, you bought this acreage and now you can't have your RV because whatever, I don't know what, I didn't read the article yet. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're fine. It was about these ordinances that they had passed that were,
But so obviously, I mean, I feel like that kind of goes without saying, right? But then you look at the HOA side of it too, because like I said, those are two separate things and two separate conversations. The HOAs are run by people. Like typically speaking, there are going to be people from the neighborhood who are the board members, who are the managers of that HOA. And why? Like, why would you want to be that asshole who treats your neighbor like crap, right? And
everyone knows it's you.
I've been on the receiving end of that, guys. And for anybody watching who is part of an HOA board, when you treat people like that, like they really don't want to comply.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you. So anyway, two separate pieces, I think, but just overall, like, you don't pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
Like if you want to start paying my mortgage, then okay, sure, maybe you can have an opinion. But until you start paying
and it's worse than that at the county level and the state level. It's worse than that because not only do they not pay your mortgage, but you pay them extra.
You pay
for
taxes.
the privilege of having a mortgage, right? Like I'm paying taxes for the purchase of this land, and not like sales tax, but like every year you come back. And so this is the point that Charlie wanted to make sure that we made. Even after you have paid your home off
you
own it free and clear, if you don't pay your taxes, they will seize your property and sell it to somebody else.
Yep.
Like, how is that? How do we even allow that to be a legal thing?
Yeah. It's maddening. It's maddening.
Who thinks that's okay? What group of people is standing out there being like, yep, that seems fair? I mean, who are these people?
The people who benefit from it.
Pay for the roads.
We hate roads. We hate roads.
I couldn't resist the who's
just gonna drink my beverage here. Just gonna drink my beverage here while you think about your roads.
For those of you who are new to the party, we don't really hate roads. We don't really hate roads. It's just what people like to say about us.
It's always the first thing, but who's going to pay for the roads is the objection to everything.
Yeah.
But the idea of property seizure, right? That the county takes your property and then sells it for its own at like a way below cost for its own revenue is not a reliable business model for revenue for the county. So when people say that that's revenue that in turn pays for things like schools and roads, I'm like, honestly, fuck off, because they shouldn't be possessing other people's homes and selling that stuff. Like that is not a realizable income stream. That's like your lottery ticket happened to get you $50. You should not be planning your fiscal revenue, your budget, on the fact that you're going to repossess people's homes and sell them. That is not a realizable revenue stream. And the idea that that's like, well, that's how we pay for the roads, then that means you're predatory and you're intentionally going out there looking for reasons to repossess people's property. And that's just garbage.
Let me tell you, in my line of work, I'm in real estate. I deal with, I do property research for real estate transactions for attorneys here in South Carolina.
So you've seen everything.
Oh, girl. You have no idea the stories I could tell you about what crazy stuff people do with their property. But it is the most heartbreaking thing, and it happens more than you would realize, more than you think even could possibly be possible. Somebody has a house. This person bought their house 40, 50 years ago. They've lived there.
Grandma's house, yeah.
It's paid for. And then they can't pay their taxes and their house gets sold at tax sale. I've seen it so many times. And it is heartbreaking. Every single time I see it, a little piece of my soul turns black. A little piece dies.
I just don't understand that. Like, I guess maybe I'm being naive, but that's not true. I'm being what I think is a good person to say when somebody buys something and they own it, the only person who can sell it is the person who owns it.
The person who
and the idea that they're on the hook for taxes that they didn't even get to determine how much those taxes were going to be. That's an arbitrary amount set by granted elected officials. But let's be honest, who votes for county council, city council? Like, people aren't showing up in droves for these things. These are like, I mean, I can't even anymore.
Well, unfortunately, people aren't educated on the type of power, like the amount of power that those people really do have. I mean, they do. It doesn't seem like a lot. You think city council or county council, but they do. They wield a lot of power. I mean, it's for those of you watching who are not politically active, who say you don't understand politics, because I know there may be a few of you out there, you don't have to understand politics. Like, it's just know it's important. Like, you need to vote. And you need to know who you're voting for. Don't just check a box. It's important.
Well,
sorry.
You're exactly right, because the zoning is decided at the city council and the county council level, and whether and the property taxes are decided at the city council and the county council level, and the state legislature level as well. So let's shift gears real quick at 22 minutes into our podcast about how you talk to your kids about this. So I titled it, "Hey, you kids, get off my lawn." And I was thinking about this as the old Dennis the Menace cartoons, where you have Mr. Wilson shaking his angry fist. And we think about what the realm of, these are certain boundaries, right? This boundary is our lawn. This boundary is our neighborhood. This boundary is the park, right? Common areas as opposed to your personal areas. How do you talk to your kids about let's start from a property perspective in terms of area. So Melissa, you've got 3 kids. So how do they share what's in the building? Do they have their own areas? Like, how do you?
Sorry, you just asked if my children share things. No, I have to get we have to get different colors of everything. So we know who, and you always have the same color thing. Like, Adeline's are always purple. These are Isabel's. They're pink. The boy gets blue or red because red's his favorite color. So, no. And if not, I carry a permanent marker in my purse. So if we get Happy Meal toys that are all the same, I can put an A or an I or a W on it. But yeah, they have no concept of that's not yours. Don't touch it. I say it 25,000 times a day, but yeah.
Possession is 9/10 of the law in your
That
house
is
what I'm
that
hearing.
is their reply. Yes. But I have it now. Okay, but it's not yours. I don't know
Jess,
when
what-
that kicks in,
That's funny.
but it hasn't yet in my house. Oh,
Jess, what about you?
We when we bought our house, we bought with enough bedrooms that we had enough for everybody plus a guest room. But we chose when we moved in to have our kids share a bedroom. And so we had a bedroom where they slept, and we had a playroom where they played. And that's where all the toys were. And so even though they had their toys, they still had this kind of like communal property type setup, right? And so, but the rule in our house has always been, if something is yours and you don't want to share, you don't have to share it. You should, because it's the right thing to do, but you have the choice not to. And so that worked out really well for us. And actually up until Jackson started getting a little bit older, and then, he needed his own space. And so they have separate rooms now.
Yeah.
But it's funny that we thought about discussing this topic this week, because we actually, this past week, had an instance where Jackson wanted to build like this bicycle trail thing in the woods behind somebody's house. But I realized after he had started building it that he was actually building it on this person's property. And so we were actually able to have this very conversation about the fact that, yes, it's the woods, right? You think it's the woods, you think it's okay, but this is part of this person's property and you don't have their permission. You can't cross their property to get to your bike trail. You can't build any part of your bike trail on their property because it's not right, because it's their property, not yours, right? And so we actually did have that conversation this week, which was kind of interesting.
Timely.
Yeah.
Timely.
Very timely.
I thought it was interesting that Melissa used the phrase "not yours." That was when Holly was little, when she was a toddler. I didn't want to say no to her because I was worried that it would lose its power, right? And so when I said no or stop, I wanted her to like immediately pull back, because that was exactly. And so whenever she reached for something that she wasn't supposed to touch, I would say, "Not yours." Not yours, right? So she's going to pull a CD out of the, whatever, not yours. On and on and on. Not yours, not yours, not yours became a thing for her. And then it would be that other kids would come over and they would start to play with her toys, and she'd be like, "Not yours, not yours." As these other children are trying to play with their toys, she'd be, "Not yours, not yours." I was like, "Well, okay, Holly, let's ease up a little bit on that." Like, you can in fact share your toys with other children.
You want to have friends, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Only child. What are you gonna do? In some ways, it worked very well for me, because certainly when I did say no and when I did say stop, like, she absolutely responded. So from a language perspective, it worked very well. But from an ultimate lesson of how to share, maybe a fail.
Well, I have my kids, they leave their toys out, and I've told them if they leave their toys in a common area, anybody can pick them up and play with them. If it's something special that you really don't want anybody else playing with, that needs to live in your room.
Nice.
So that's your room and your space. So
Yeah.
don't leave your stuff in the common areas. Or we
have that same phrase in our house, common areas, in terms of like, we don't leave empty cups. You don't leave trash. You don't leave, you don't leave a place worse than you found it, because that's a common area. Dad and I live there too, right? Like, we all take care of the kitchen. We all take care of the living room. Exactly. Yep. We just had this conversation last night, maybe it was the night before, where I was like, look, things don't get cleaned up because I mess them and now I clean them. It's not always like that. It's that things get cleaned up because they need to be cleaned up. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is that they got dirty. we live together in this common space, and caring for the common space is everybody's problem. And just doing your part in terms of like, well, I cleaned all of my stuff, like that doesn't help. Yeah. Everything should be clean all the time. If you're only policing your own, then you're not caring for the common area in a contributor kind of way, right? So we just had this conversation in my house. I love the phrase common areas because it says, hey, we're cohabitating. We're living together. We're having to make this work as collaborative people.
Yeah. And sometimes, see, my kids aren't quite at that understanding. You help pick up other people's messes because you live together and you love them and this is our common area. But, trying to explain, well, I know that's not yours, but sometimes your brother picks up stuff that is yours and it's not his because he does. You do for your family because sometimes someone else picks up your mess.
And I think that's so something that I really wanted to touch on, and we haven't. And I know that we're at 30 minutes, so we might go a little bit over, but that's a really good segue into something that I really wanted to touch on in this episode, which was the debacle this week with Dr. Seuss books and Mr. Potato Head, right? Like we all have this responsibility to clean up. We all share this thing. And this past week, the company that makes Mr. Potato Head has decided that they're going to start packaging it as just Potato Head, right? And the Dr. Seuss folks have decided that they're going to pull some of their books. A lot of people are claiming cancel culture. Any of you who have watched for any amount of time know that we've covered that topic. And if you have not seen that episode, you need to hop on back and watch it. But this was a good example of, companies choosing to do something with their property that they felt was the right thing to do, whatever that reason was, and however you feel about it is inconsequential.
Was there a big uproar for them to do this? I don't think they were pressured
they weren't.
They just decided.
Yeah. And it's, we could toss around why they did it all day long. But I think we all agree that there was probably some financial motivation, and then they probably slapped a label of, being culturally appropriate for the times. But
helps make the decision.
It doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter.
You made a good point, Jess, before we came on the air about the just even the visibility of this, the transparency of it. Why did the company decide to do this, and why did they make it public? So, to the point that you made, these 6 Dr. Seuss titles weren't the best-selling Dr. Seuss titles. Like, it's not as if they're taking the Cat in the Hat off the. You know what I mean? It's not Horton Hears a Who. These are like, wait, he wrote that book too? Because of course he did, because he wrote 1 million books, right? So these are not your like most expected titles. These are titles that probably weren't selling in the first place. So why did they even tell us about it? Why not simply remove them? And like, would anybody even actually notice?
I mean, really, guys, we're not canceling the Goonies here.
No one's
God help us.
Goonies, ever. I mean, what are you talking about? There's no cancellation of the Goonies.
And the thing about Potato Head, I was like, wait, at first I thought, what?
Don't they already do that?
But then I thought about it, like there are so many potato heads. There's a Mr. Potato Head, there's a Mrs. Potato Head, there's a baby potato head, there's a policeman potato head. If they box every single one individually, like imagine the cost of that. I mean, like just from a business perspective, financially, like just put them all in one box and call it Potato Head. Like maybe it wasn't political. Maybe
I kind of already thought that's what they did. So I haven't bought a scene of Mr. Potato Head in forever. So
right, me too, Melissa.
I thought they all came together anyways.
And I didn't think of this as like a non-binary gender statement. Right. Like I didn't think of it that way as much as it was like, to your point, here's the potato. Now sell
Here's all
all the
the-
Just
accessories.
do what you will. Do what you will.
Do what you will to the
Gender
potato.
fluid anyways.
You don't need to
The
have
way I've
multiple
seen some
potatoes.
people
You can
build a
just have
potato
the
head.
one. And sometimes she's a Mr. and sometimes she's a Mrs. And we love your RuPaul potato. It's fine. Like
Yeah,
nobody,
I don't-
yeah.
No one's mad at your potato. I don't
I
know.
love it. I love it.
It didn't, I wasn't shocked and horrified by the so-called cancellation of Mr. Potato Head. I felt like that seems like a perfectly sound business decision. So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up. I don't know what happened to Jessica.
Oh, maybe she accidentally shut off her computer.
No,
like
the
some other
kid,
big dog
the
did.
kid decided to come in because he wanted to show me something. So I needed
Well,
to.
that's okay. I mean, Melissa hugs her kids every week. It's like we're hanging on, waiting for the kid to walk in on Melissa's show.
Oh, we got
That's
15
why we went
minutes.
over.
15
That's
more minutes.
really
I
why
got
we
you.
went over,
I got
so
you.
you guys could see Melissa's kid.
Yeah.
So great.
She hasn't noticed we're podcasting.
Week
so.
in, week out, that kid shows up like, "Deuces, mom, I'm here."
She
It's
loves
like a
being
great,
on
it's a
the
great
show.
photo bomb. It's a great photo bomb.
She is
All right, well, this was a good
absolutely
episode. Thank you, gals, so much for talking about this. The key, I think, on the property rights as far as libertarians are concerned
Oh.
goes back to that non-aggression principle. Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. And a lot of the property rights ordinances, laws, the enforcement mechanisms that are out there are about taking people's stuff, right? That's the consequence for not complying with these laws. And
not complying doesn't hurt anybody. Most of the time, no one gets hurt if you don't follow the ordinance.
Right. Oh, we
not
should
like
have
it's
an
a
entire
secret.
episode about just not following that law. Laws you don't
Let's
have
do
to
it.
follow.
Let's do it.
I like
love it.
I bet you we can come up
Anarchy.
with a great big list.
Yes, renegade moms. These are the laws we do not follow.
Let's teach these people the real meaning of anarchy, because a lot of people don't understand what anarchy actually means.
As she pours
Carrying
herself
all
another glass of
implications.
wine. This is a fantastic idea. Of course, we come up with all of our best ideas at the end of your Snoop bottle, with your Snoop bottle of wine. I can't imagine why we don't brainstorm this way we do brainstorm this way every single week.
After.
That's right. Good to have all of you, our live viewers. We had 4 live viewers all at once tonight, and we're glad to have you guys. Hopefully the videos will do their magic. Thank you. Subscribe, like, share, tell your friends about us. parentingporcupines.com. Peace out.